Lisa was a force of nature. She commanded attention in every room. As a high-powered executive, she excelled in her career. Her presentations were legendary. Lisa closed deals with a single handshake. She had the corner office, the luxury car, and the respect of her peers. Lisa was living the dream, or so it seemed. Beneath the surface, a secret lurked, a secret that haunted her every move. Lisa's days were a whirlwind of meetings and conference calls. She thrived on the pressure, the adrenaline of the corporate world. Her phone was an extension of herself, constantly buzzing with new opportunities and challenges. Lisa was a master of multitasking, juggling deadlines and expectations with ease. But behind her confident facade, a growing unease gnawed at her conscience. The weight of her secret grew heavier with each passing day. Behind closed doors, Lisa's life was a different story. The confidence she projected to the world crumbled away. She found herself trapped in a cycle of lies. Small, white lies at first. Lies to avoid confrontation, to please others, to maintain the perfect image she had crafted. But these lies had a way of multiplying, of spinning out of control. Soon, Lisa was caught in a web of her own making. Every night, Lisa promised herself that tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow, she would break free from the chains of her compulsion. Tomorrow, she would embrace honesty. But morning would come, and the fear would return, the fear of judgment, of rejection, of ruining everything she had worked so hard to build. And so, the cycle continued, each lie pushing her further into the abyss of deceit. One evening, a mysterious envelope arrived. It was addressed to Lisa in elegant calligraphy. Curiosity piqued. She carefully opened the seal. Inside, a single card lay nestled in black tissue paper. The card was stark white with a single word embossed in silver: truth. Intrigued and more than a little apprehensive, Lisa turned the card over. A time, a date, and an address were inscribed on the back. The invitation was both alluring and terrifying. Part of Lisa wanted to discard it immediately, to pretend she had never received it, but a stronger impulse, a desperate yearning for change, urged her forward. This could be her chance, her opportunity to break free from the prison of her lies. With a deep breath and a surge of determination, Lisa made her decision. She would attend. She would face her demons head-on. The address on the card led Lisa to a secluded mansion on the outskirts of the city. A sense of mystery hung heavy in the air. Wrought iron gates, shrouded in shadows, guarded the entrance. As Lisa stepped out of the cab, a shiver ran down her spine. This was a place of secrets. She could feel it. Taking a deep breath, she approached the imposing front doors. A tall, imposing figure, dressed entirely in black, greeted her at the door. His eyes, dark and penetrating, seemed to see right through her facade. Without a word, he ushered her inside. Lisa found herself in a grand foyer, the air thick with the scent of antique furniture and old money. A fire crackled in the hearth, casting dancing shadows on the high ceilings adorned with intricate moldings. She had never seen such opulence, such an air of exclusivity. The silence was broken only by the soft murmur of voices coming from a room at the end of a long, dimly lit hallway. Lisa hesitated for a moment, her heart pounding in her chest. What had she gotten herself into? Gathering her courage, Lisa followed the sound of voices. The hallway opened into a spacious salon, bathed in soft, golden light. A group of people stood in small clusters, their faces a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. They, like Lisa, had received the mysterious invitation. They too were looking for a way out of their own personal prisons. As Lisa moved through the room, she couldn't help but study the other guests. A young woman with haunted eyes nervously twisted her fingers. An older gentleman, his face etched with worry lines, stared intently into his drink. A couple whispered urgently to each other in a corner, their faces pale and drawn. Each person in the room carried a secret, a burden they were desperate to shed. Lisa felt a strange sense of kinship with these strangers. They were all here for a reason, all searching for something. Perhaps, she thought, this was a safe space, a place where they could confront their demons without judgment. A glimmer of hope flickered within her. Maybe, just maybe, this night could change everything. Suddenly, the room fell silent. All eyes turned towards a tall, elegant woman who had entered the salon unnoticed. She moved with an air of quiet authority, her piercing gaze commanding attention. A hush fell over the room as she began to speak. Her voice, low and melodic, washed over Lisa, sending chills down her spine. "Welcome," she began, her voice resonating with an almost hypnotic quality. "You are here because you have a problem, a habit, a compulsion that you cannot control. You have tried to break free, but your efforts have been in vain." Lisa's breath caught in her throat. How did this woman know? How could she possibly understand the torment that raged within her? "This game," the woman continued, her eyes sweeping across the room, "is your chance to change. For the next 24 hours, you will be given a challenge tailored specifically to your deepest struggle. Succeed, and you will be free. Fail, and the consequences will be dire." Lisa's heart pounded in her chest. What had she gotten herself into? A wave of murmurs rippled through the room. Fear, anticipation, and a flicker of desperate hope danced in the eyes of the participants. The elegant woman, radiating an aura of power and mystery, continued to speak. "Each of you," she announced, her voice resonating with quiet intensity, "will be assigned a challenge, a test, tailored to your specific affliction." Lisa's breath hitched. What would her challenge be? "For the next 24 hours, the woman declared, her voice echoing through the silent salon, "you will live by a single rule." The suspense in the room was palpable, a tangible force that pressed down on Lisa's chest. The woman paused, letting the silence stretch, amplifying the anticipation. "You will speak nothing but the truth." Lisa's heart skipped a beat. The truth. Such a simple concept, yet so terrifying in its implications. Her entire life had been built on a foundation of half-truths and carefully constructed facades. Could she really abandon that, even for a day? The very thought sent a tremor of fear through her. But as she looked around the room, at the faces of her fellow participants, she saw a reflection of her own fear, her own desperate yearning for change. The elegant woman, with a subtle gesture, signaled for the games to begin. The room buzzed with nervous energy as participants received their individual instructions. Lisa found herself standing next to a man whose face was etched with a weariness that belied his youthful appearance. He had kind eyes, she noted, and a nervous habit of running his hand through his hair. "Truth, huh?" Mark said. "Not sure I even remember what that feels like anymore." "Me neither," Lisa admitted. "I'm Lisa, and I tell lies." As the night wore on, Lisa found herself drawn to Mark's quiet strength. He listened with an intensity that was both disarming and comforting as she hesitantly shared snippets of her story. He didn't judge, didn't offer platitudes. He simply listened, his silence speaking volumes. For the first time, Lisa felt a flicker of hope, a belief that maybe, just maybe, she could break free from the chains of her deception. They shared their strategies for navigating the treacherous terrain of truth-telling, their laughter echoing through the grand salon as they recounted their awkward attempts at honesty. Lisa found herself opening up to Mark in ways she never thought possible. He seemed to understand the burden she carried, the weight of her carefully constructed facades. But as the hours ticked by, a nagging doubt began to creep into Lisa's mind. She noticed Mark's eyes would dart nervously towards the elegant woman who orchestrated the game, a flicker of something unreadable in their depths. She overheard snippets of his conversations with other participants, his words carefully chosen, his demeanor shifting depending on who was within earshot. Lisa pushed the doubts aside, clinging to the hope that she had finally found someone she could trust. But the seeds of suspicion, once planted, were quick to take root. The game progressed, each challenge pushing Lisa further beyond her comfort zone. Her carefully constructed world, built on a foundation of white lies and half-truths, began to crumble around her. The fear of exposure, of judgment, was ever present, a knot of anxiety that tightened in her chest with each passing moment. But amidst the turmoil, Lisa found solace in her unexpected alliance with Mark. They shared their triumphs and their failures, their laughter echoing through the opulent rooms of the mansion as they navigated the treacherous path of radical honesty. Mark, with his quiet strength and unwavering support, became Lisa's anchor in the storm. He challenged her to confront her deepest fears, to embrace the liberating power of authenticity. For the first time in her life, Lisa felt truly seen, her carefully constructed mask stripped away, revealing the vulnerable woman beneath. Together, they devised strategies to overcome the game's increasingly difficult challenges. They shared their insights into the motivations of the other participants, their whispers conspiratorial in the hushed grandeur of the mansion's library. Lisa, accustomed to the cutthroat world of corporate negotiations, found a strange comfort in their shared purpose. With Mark by her side, she felt a surge of hope, a belief that maybe, just maybe, she could emerge from this crucible a changed woman. As the hours turned into days, Lisa found herself lowering her guard, allowing herself to trust Mark completely. He was her confidant, her rock in a sea of uncertainty. But as the game reached its climax, a series of subtle cracks began to appear in Mark's carefully constructed facade. A flicker of calculation in his eyes, a carefully crafted lie disguised as a harmless joke, a sudden shift in demeanor when certain participants were near. Lisa, her senses heightened by the game's relentless pursuit of truth, couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. She noticed the way Mark would steer their conversations away from his past, his answers vague, his tone evasive whenever she probed too deeply. The doubt, once a whisper in the back of her mind, grew louder, casting a shadow over their once unshakable bond. She tried to rationalize her suspicions, to attribute them to the pressure of the game, the constant scrutiny they were under. But deep down, a cold realization began to dawn. Mark, the gambler who claimed to be seeking redemption, was still playing a game of his own. And Lisa, blinded by her own desire for connection, for a way out of her web of lies, had become an unwitting pawn. The truth hit Lisa with the force of a physical blow. She stumbled upon a conversation between Mark and the elegant woman, their hushed words echoing through the mansion's grand ballroom. Mark, his voice a low murmur, was revealing Lisa's deepest fear, the one secret she had vowed to protect at all costs. He was using her vulnerability, her trust, to gain an advantage in the game. The world seemed to tilt on its axis as the full weight of his betrayal crashed down on her. The anger, raw and visceral, surged through her, threatening to consume her. How could she have been so wrong about him? How could she have allowed herself to be so easily manipulated? In that moment, Lisa swore she would never let anyone hurt her like this again. She confronted Mark, her voice trembling with a mixture of rage and heartbreak. His eyes, once filled with warmth and understanding, were now cold, calculating. He didn't deny her accusations, didn't even bother to apologize. He simply shrugged, a smug smile playing on his lips. "It's all part of the game, Lisa," he said, his voice devoid of remorse. "Don't take it personally." Mark's betrayal was a bitter pill to swallow. Lisa, reeling from the shock, retreated from the other participants, seeking refuge in the mansion's sprawling gardens. The carefully manicured lawns and vibrant flower beds, once a source of serenity, now felt oppressive, suffocating. How could she have been so blind? How could she have allowed herself to be so easily manipulated? Anger, raw and visceral, coursed through her veins, fueled by the realization that she had been played, used. But as the initial shock subsided, a new emotion began to surface: curiosity. Who was this elegant woman, the puppet master behind this elaborate charade? What was her endgame? Driven by a need for answers, Lisa sought out the woman who had orchestrated the game. She found her in the mansion's library, surrounded by floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, her face illuminated by the soft glow of a reading lamp. The woman, sensing Lisa's presence, looked up from her book, a knowing smile playing on her lips. "I believe congratulations are in order, Lisa," she said, her voice as smooth and cool as silk. Lisa, her anger simmering just beneath the surface, met the woman's gaze. "Congratulations?" she spat, her voice laced with venom. "For what? For being played like a fool?" The woman, unfazed by Lisa's outburst, calmly closed her book, setting it aside on the table beside her. "On the contrary, Lisa," she said, her voice laced with amusement, "you have exceeded our expectations." "Our expectations," Lisa repeated, her brow furrowed in confusion. "What are you talking about?" "This game, Lisa," she began, her voice taking on a pedagogical tone, "is not what you think it is." Lisa listened, her skepticism warring, with a growing sense of dread as the woman unveiled the truth. The game, she explained, was a social experiment, a meticulously crafted study of human behavior under extreme pressure. The participants, carefully selected for their specific vices, were nothing more than lab rats, their every move observed, their every reaction recorded. The revelation hit Lisa like a physical blow. All this time, she had believed she was fighting for her freedom, for a chance to break free from the chains of her deception. But in reality, she had been dancing to someone else's tune, her every move manipulated, her every emotion scrutinized. "Why?" Lisa whispered, her voice hoarse with emotion. "Why go to all this trouble? What's the point?" "We are interested in the nature of truth, Lisa," she replied, her voice as cool and detached as ever. "In the choices people make when confronted with their deepest selves." "And what about me?" Lisa asked, her voice trembling with suppressed rage. "What about my choices?" "The choice, Lisa, has always been yours," she said, her voice echoing through the silent library. To continue playing the game or to walk away, Lisa stood frozen in the opulent library, the weight of the revelation crushing her spirit. The elegant woman's words echoed in the silence, each syllable a hammer blow to the fragile scaffolding of her reality. The game, the challenges, the carefully constructed facade of camaraderie, all a cruel charade. She had been played, manipulated, dissected under the cold, clinical gaze of these so-called researchers. Fury, hot and raw, surged through her veins. She wanted to lash out, to scream her rage at the injustice of it all. But even in her anger, a chilling truth settled in her gut. The game may have been a sham, but her lies, her carefully constructed facades, were all her own. "What will you do, Lisa?" she asked, her voice a silken whisper that cut through the tension like a razor. The question hung in the air, heavy with unspoken implications. Lisa could walk away, disappear back into the comforting anonymity of her life, her secrets intact. Or she could stay, confront the truth of her own making, and expose herself to the judgment of these strangers. The choice, as the woman so pointedly reminded her, was hers. The final challenge of the game was as simple as it was terrifying. Each participant had to confess their deepest, darkest secret, the one truth they had guarded most fiercely. The setting was almost theatrical, a grand ballroom bathed in the soft glow of candlelight, the air thick with anticipation and dread. As Lisa looked around at the faces of her fellow participants, she saw a reflection of her own fear, her own desperate yearning for absolution. One by one, they stepped forward, their voices trembling as they laid bare their souls. Stories of betrayal, of addiction, of broken dreams and shattered lives filled the silent room. Each confession, a painful reminder of the shared human capacity for both darkness and light. And still, Lisa hesitated, her heart pounding against her ribs like a caged bird. The truth of her compulsion, the sheer volume of lies she had woven into the fabric of her life, felt insurmountable, a suffocating weight on her chest. What would these strangers think, these fellow travelers, on this twisted journey of self-discovery? Would they understand the fear that drove her, the desperation to be accepted, to be loved? As the last confession faded into the silence, all eyes turned to Lisa. The weight of their collective gaze felt like a physical pressure, pushing down on her, threatening to crush her. But in that moment of utter vulnerability, something shifted within her. The fear, though still present, no longer held the same power. Taking a deep breath, Lisa stepped forward, her gaze sweeping across the faces of the participants. "I'm a liar," she said, her voice surprisingly steady. A collective gasp rippled through the room. The truth, once spoken aloud, felt both terrifying and liberating. Lisa continued, her voice gaining strength as she spoke, her carefully constructed walls crumbling around her. She spoke of the small, white lies that had escalated into a tangled web of deceit. She spoke of the fear that gnawed at her, the constant need to project an image of perfection, of control. And finally, she spoke of the crushing weight of her secret, the shame that had haunted her for so long. Silence hung heavy in the air after Lisa finished speaking. The air, once thick with judgment and apprehension, now vibrated with a strange mix of empathy and relief. The faces that had moments ago been contorted in fear and shame now reflected a shared sense of vulnerability, of human frailty laid bare. Lisa, her heart pounding in her chest, braced herself for the wave of condemnation she was sure would follow, but it never came. Instead, a strange thing happened. A ripple of understanding, of shared experience, seemed to pass through the room. Heads nodded in silent acknowledgement. A few participants even reached out, their touches tentative yet reassuring, a silent chorus of support. For the first time in her life, Lisa felt truly seen, not for the carefully crafted image she projected to the world, but for the flawed, complex human being she was. As the participants began to disperse, the first rays of dawn painting the sky in hues of pink and gold, Lisa felt a profound sense of release. The game, with all its manipulations and deceptions, had inadvertently set her free. She had confronted her demons, laid bare her deepest insecurities, and emerged from the crucible stronger, more self-aware. The price of freedom, she realized, was not silence, but the courage to speak her truth, no matter the cost. Returning to her life outside the confines of the mansion, Lisa felt like a stranger in her own skin. The familiar routines, the carefully curated facade of success now felt hollow, meaningless. The lies that had once rolled off her tongue with practiced ease now caught in her throat, a bitter taste lingering on her tongue. The road to authenticity, she quickly discovered, was paved with discomfort and uncertainty. The temptation to slip back into old habits, to retreat behind the comforting walls of deception, was ever present. But the memory of that night, the raw vulnerability in the faces of her fellow participants, spurred her forward. She had glimpsed a world beyond the confines of her carefully constructed lies, a world where honesty, however messy and uncomfortable, was the only path to true connection. Lisa began to make small changes, subtle shifts in her behavior that reflected her newfound commitment to honesty. She started saying no to requests that didn't align with her values. She practiced expressing her needs and desires openly and directly. She even, to her own surprise, confessed a long-held secret to a trusted friend, the weight of the unspoken truth lifting from her shoulders with each word. The journey wasn't easy. There were missteps, moments of doubt, and the lingering fear of judgment. But as Lisa leaned into her newfound authenticity, she discovered a strength and resilience she never knew she possessed. The carefully constructed walls she had erected around her heart began to crumble, replaced by a newfound sense of openness and vulnerability. The world, she realized, didn't crumble when she stopped trying to control every narrative, when she allowed herself to be seen in all her flawed humanity. In fact, the opposite happened. The relationships that truly mattered deepened, built on a foundation of trust and mutual respect. The fear of judgment faded, replaced by the quiet confidence that came from living in alignment with her values. The game, for all its manipulations and deceptions, had gifted Lisa with a profound truth. Authenticity, though often a treacherous path, was the only way to truly live, and that, she realized, was a prize worth fighting for.